All right, good morning, everybody. We left off on the bottom of Kuf Mem, Amud Beis at the bottom, 5 lines from the bottom, 5 lines from the bottom. So we were discussing in the Mishnah about clearing out a pen, an area trough where animals were. And so the last statement was, now, you're allowed to take from one animal some feed or food and put it by another animal because the other animal will eat it. Food, right? It's used for or items that are used for eating on Shabbos or for feeding an animal is not muksa, but other items are. But as long as it's feed, then it will be mutter to go ahead and to move and to touch. So Tanachad the nightlim lifnei behema shapia yafe. The nightlim lifnei behema shapia ra. We have one brisa that says you're allowed to go ahead and move from an animal we'll soon define these terms, whose mouth is good, and put it in front of an animal whose mouth is bad. The tiny another brisa that says you're allowed to take from an animal whose mouth is bad. The put it in front of an animal whose mouth is good. What is it talking about? So Amar Abaye, Edi v'Edi, both of them are basically saying the same thing. What are they saying? Mak mechamra lekame tara shaklinan. You're allowed to go ahead and take food that is before a donkey and put it before an ox or a cow. But however, to take from a cow and put it now in front of a donkey, you're not allowed to go ahead and do that. So what's talking about? So it will explain. What is an animal which is an animal which is a good mouth, a good eater? What's that? It's referring to a donkey. Why? The less they riri. Because over there, it doesn't basically go ahead and have a lot of saliva on the food, and therefore it's not drooling on the food and getting it gross. Have a nice to go ahead and put it in front of an animal whose mouth is a drooling animal, which would be an ox, right? So therefore, a donkey which doesn't go ahead and drool, you go ahead and take the food and put it in front of an ox. But once the ox has it, and then you put it in front of the donkey, it will no longer eat it because all the drool that was on it. And the islay, turn the page, the islay riri, right? Because that was referring right in front of the ox, which does have drool. Right? That what you said also that you're allowed to go ahead and take food from before an animal that has a bad mouth. That was referring to a chamor deloy daik. A chamor is not a picky eater. V'yachil, right? And then you're allowed to go ahead and put in front of an animal that has a good mouth, and that's bipara the daiki v'yachil. That is referring to a cow that is more picky, and then we'll go ahead and and then eat it. So therefore, in both cases, they actually have the same halacha that you're allowed to go ahead and take the food from the donkey and move it to the cow, because then the cow will further eat it. Fine. Nine Mishnah. So now Mishnah says, Hakash. We're on the top line. Those who's just coming out of Kuf Mem Aleph, which is yesterday's daf. So Hakash Shal Gabi Hamita. So one who has straw upon a bed. Now, straw is normally not used for Shabbos. It's used either for burning, right, or can have another use, or building for materials. But if it's not designated for let's say for one to stuff his pillow or mattress, or if it's not designated to feed his animal, then it's muksa. The other person should not move it with his hand. Ella minaneh begufa. Rather, he can go basically if it's on his bed, right? We see it was left on his bed. He can go ahead and basically lie in his bed and sort of move it over with his shoulders. However, if it was set aside before Shabbos to feed animals, or if it was, let's say, on his put on his pillow or his bed in order to go ahead and use it and sleep with it on Shabbos, or sleep on it on Shabbos, then he can go ahead and move with his hand. It's no longer muksa because it was set aside for use on Shabbos. And mach beish shel bali batim matirim avaloi kovshin. You're allowed to go ahead and if a shirt is being pressed from before Shabbos, and basically it's between the boards, right, that were tightened in order to go ahead and press the shirt. You're allowed to go ahead and loosen the boards in order to go ahead and take the shirt out, to slide it out. But not if it's you're allowed to go ahead and press it. All right, now go ahead and press on Shabbos. However, if it is the professional press, such as belongs to those who do laundry, right, in the pressing business, those are much bigger and larger ones. Then it looks like a person is preparing it. He shouldn't go ahead, and he's not allowed to go ahead and release that on or do that on Shabbos. And Rabbi Huda Imer Imayam Muter Be'er of Shabbos, and the Mata is Kula V'Shemta. However, if it already was partially loosened from before Shabbos, even if that of the professional, right, presser, then you would be, once you start loosening it, then one is allowed to go ahead and continue to do it. It doesn't look like he's being misaking the begadim, and therefore he's allowed to go ahead and basically further loosen it and slip it out and then take it. Fine. So that was the Mishnah. We'll have to explain. So Amar Rav Nachman, Hai Pugla Milamata Lamata Shari. So that which we said, we actually saw this case earlier. Where was this? We saw it 3 weeks ago or so, right? We're referring to a radish. A radish that's in the ground, right? A radish is sort of like rounded, like an oval shape, but which has a wider top than bottom. So if it was in the ground and the wider part was on top, so when you pull it out, the dirt won't move, then it's mutter to go ahead and pull it out. However, it's opposite. If the bottom is up and the narrow part is sticking out, and when you pull it out, the wider part comes up, and therefore it will displace dirt. You're moving dirt, then usher. So Amar Rav Ada Bar Ava. So Amar Bey Rav. It's in the Yeshiva Rav.
What are they trying to accomplish by moving this? They're trying to get
They're trying to take the radish.
What?
They're trying to take the radish.
Oh.
Right, pulling it out of the ground. They're trying to take it. Right? They want to eat it or something.
Okay.
So he says, Tani Delik Rav Nachman. So our Mishnah, right, is not like Rav Nachman. Why? Because our Mishnah seems to say that if there's straw in the bed, you can't move it with your hand, but you can move it with your body. You can allow to do tiltum and atzad, right? But in the case of the radish, right, they're tiltum and atzad. You're moving the dirt. You're not moving the dirt directly. You're moving indirectly. You're moving it with the radish, right? The dirt is attached to the ground, and you're displacing it. So what do we see over here? So our Mishnah is not like Rav Nachman, right? Which says in our Mishnah, Hakasha al Gabi Amita lo yinana biyada. Aval manen bigufa. You don't know how to go ahead and move it with your hand, but you can move it with your body. However, if it was already designated as animal feed, or you're using it for your pillows and your sheet, manen biyada. And then you go ahead and shake with your hands. So we learn from here that according to our Mishnah, right, that tiltum and atzad doesn't count as moving, therefore it's mutter. However, Rav Nachman holds that tiltum and atzad is even usher, because if you're going to move it directly, the earth, even though that was not your intentions, nevertheless, you're not allowed to do it. And Amr Rav Yehuda, Hani pilpuli medek chada bekata sakina shari tarti usher. So he says Rav Yehuda. So now we're going to have many halachas. We're going to be listing many halachas basically now till the end of the parak when it comes to Shabbos. So here's another halacha. So you want to go ahead and crush peppers, right, and cut them up. So you're only allowed to use the back of a knife, right, and you do it chada, one at a time. However, if you do it two, then it's too many. Then it's close to the malacha of teichin, right, of what's called, of cutting, of grinding. And Rav Omar, no, cave in the Mishani, afilu tubanami. So no, even since you're using the back of a knife, which is not the normal way, so therefore, since you're using something which is not the normal way, therefore you're even allowed to go ahead and do many at one time. And Omer Rav Yehuda, man desachi b'maya linagiv nafshei bereisha v'hada diselek. A person, let's say he's going to go ahead, he goes down into the water. He goes down into the water to go ahead and bathe. Now he goes down to the Carmelis, right? So he should really dry himself off, make sure he's dry before he leaves. Why? Perhaps he's going to go ahead and carry, right, Dalat Amos, 4 Amos in a Carmelis, which Asim is Rabbanon, but he's going to carry the droplets, the water that's on his body, he's going to be carrying Dalat Amos. So therefore, he should be careful as not to go ahead and carry the droplets. So if that's the case, if he goes inside the water, so if you were worried about moving water, so when he goes in the water, so the water, right, when you see waves, he's causing water to move away from him, right? Because he's jumping in the water, so he's causing water to move Dalat Amos in the Carmelis. So the answer is not the Carmelis Lagasser, right? They weren't in the Sake, and they didn't make a decree in the case of moving Keicha, something that was indirectly in a Carmelis, that is still motor. So therefore, there's no problem of basically jumping in the water or entering water, which will move water right through the waves. It's not a problem in a Carmelis. And Amar Abaye v'Temer Rav Yehuda tit shal gabi raglo mekancha b'karka v'mekancha b'chayso. So we're going to see different opinions about this. But let's say a person has some teat, some clay, right, or earth, right, that's on his shoe, right. So he's allowed to go ahead and scrape, or let's say on his foot, right. He's allowed it says over here you can scrape it on the ground, but not scrape it on the wall, right. Scrape it on the wall. So Amarav, so my time because why can't you put it on the wall? So Mishun the Mechze Kabbalah looks like he's putting like another layer of teat on the wall, another layer of clay or or pitch on the wall. So Gemara says, ha build binyan chaklahu. What do you mean, right? Is this are we poor in this? This is the walls of a poor person. In other words, who says he's building? No one really builds walls like this. So what is the issue? Therefore, Rava says no. Opposite, right? You're allowed to go ahead and wipe your foot if it has the teat on it. You can go ahead and wipe it on the wall. However, you can't go ahead and wipe it on the ground, right? Dilma also gumos because he might go ahead and make holes in the ground by wiping the ground or smoothing the ground. And therefore, since he's smoothing the ground, that would be a malach, as we saw earlier, in terms of one, if he's smoothing out in the fields, it could be part of plowing. If he can go ahead and does in the house, it could be part of burning them because that's where people do it. Fine. We're in Itamar, maybe 2/3 of the way down, those of you who just joined, second word of the line. So Itamar, Mar Berei Ravino, Omar Echad Zevech Aser, and Rapapa Omar Echad Zevech Mutter. Amar Berei Ravina says both wiping on the wall or on the ground is usher for reasons that we said, either appears like building or smoothing holes. And Rav Papa says no, both of them were not. Both of them are mutter. Elamar Berei Ravina by mekanchli. That's okay. According to Ravina, who says no, you're not allowed to do it either way. So we're going to go ahead and wipe it. So mekanchli, go ahead and wipe it on a beam. Right, wipe it on a beam. Right, you're not. It doesn't appear like you're building, and you're also not smoothing holes. And Amarava Lalisev in Shapume Delachia Dilma Migra Le Chefetz Vasadisri. Also, a person shouldn't go ahead and sit at the edge of a lechi, right? The edge of a makom of a place which was enclosed that carry. You have your erud there, your lechi, your beam there, because perhaps something might fall from him and fall out into the Rishus Harabim or outside the lechi, and it'll go ahead and carry it back in. So therefore, do not go ahead and sit at the edge. And the Amar Rabba Litzadet Inshish Kuva, right? Inshish Kuva. Dilma Asi Lashuli Gumos. Person also shouldn't go ahead and basically move a barrel, right? Move it to move it around so that it's sitting on level ground, because that itself sort of levels the ground underneath the barrel. And therefore, also once again, I'll go ahead and be smoothing the ground and smoothing any holes. Person shouldn't go ahead and take basically a wet rag and put it inside a jug, because by putting it in, he'll be coming to doing a schita, which is squeezing a person, which is a malacha to go ahead and squeeze it out. And Amar Rav Kahana tit shal gabe bigdo. So a person, let's say, has dirt on his clothing, he's allowed to go ahead, right, and rub it from the inside, but not go ahead and rub it from the outside. Person, one of the malachas is a malacha of malaben, right, of whitening, right? Whitening is a malacha. So many issues of laundering come from whitening. One is not allowed to go ahead and whiten or bleach things on Shabbos. So therefore, this perhaps could be a malacha of whitening, right? If you go ahead and you're scraping it on the outside of where the actual dirt is. So therefore, if you go on the inside, which is indirectly, therefore that would be mutter. So meisvei Teach al gabe menale be'agro begav sakin. So he says, if you have, go ahead and use dirt, or this pitcher, this clay that's on a shoe, then go ahead and scrape it off with the handle of a knife. However, if it's on his clothes, go ahead and use his fingernail. It says as long as you don't scrape it. So it says over there you can't go ahead and rub it, right? Either on the inside or the outside, right? No way. You can only just try and scratch it off a little bit with your fingernail. So my love, shalikas cloud doesn't mean you can't go ahead and scrape it at all. So no, that what you said you can't scrape it. It means you can't scrape it on the outside, but you would be allowed to go ahead and scrape it on the inside, which is indirectly. And Amar Rabbi Yevo, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Yanai, Megarin Minal Chodesh Lo Lashin. Person allowed to go ahead and scrape only from a new shoe, but not an old shoe. An old shoe, he would be smoothing, right? The halacha by smoothing. I guess he perhaps will take off, since it's an old shoe, some of maybe the outer layers might come off, and therefore by scraping an old leather shoe, one would be memachek, would be violating the smoothing on Shabbos. So turn the page to my Mugaro. So with what way will he go ahead and be able to go ahead and scrape the shoes? Some Revo, the gav sakin. Oh, not the regular way, only with the back of a knife. Fine. So Amar Lei Hausaba Sami Didcha Mak Meha. The Tanya Rechia. No, don't learn that which you just taught. Rather, learn that which Rechia taught. Ein Megar Loimin Al Chodesh Loimin Al Yashan Lo Yisuch Es Ragel B'Shem. Person. So Allah is there. First of all, you shouldn't go ahead and scrape not an old shoe and not even a new shoe, no shoes at all, smoothing. And you can't go ahead and you can't go ahead and anoint with oil, right, on your foot. Right? Can't go ahead and anoint his foot and then go ahead and put it in a shoe, right? In other words, while his foot is in a shoe or a sandal, he can't go ahead and put oil on his shoe or his foot, because then he's treating the leather, all right? He's treating the leather, and therefore it is a violation, right? So it's on Shabbos. Therefore, in this case, he would not be allowed to go ahead and do it. It could be a halacha of even of tanning, of ma'abed, right? A person is tanning, right, by applying on the leather. So therefore, if he puts oil on his foot while it's in the shoe, it will be no good. So what should he do? He can go ahead and first put oil on his foot, and then he can put his foot on the shoe. And even though indirectly some oil might be getting on the hide, or not the hide, on the shoe, and the leather shoe, it would be mutter. The sach kol gufo v'sheven misagel al gabi katfalia. Right, he's allowed to go ahead and put oil on his body and then roll, right, go on top of a leather pad or leather sheet, right? We're not chayshish about this. In other words, so a person is allowed to once again apply oil to his body, and then even though his body comes in contact with leather, since that is indirect, the application, it's not the normal way of doing it, therefore it would be mutter to do. It's only talking about if where one was, he only wanted to polish it, basically to shine it. If he was trying to go ahead and completely tan, if those were intentions, then it would be usher. So it says labdo pshita. First of all, if his intentions were to go ahead and tan it, for sure it's usher. And furthermore, even if his intention was to polish it, would that be mutter? Right? That's also malach. You can't go ahead and polish the leather. So I want to say it like this. No, it's no. If his intentions were to either polish it or to tan it, usher. And that what you say is mutter is only if it was the amount to polish it, because to polish it, you need less oil, right? And so if it was the amount of to only polish it, and that wasn't his intentions, then it's mutter. But if it was the amount of tanning it, even if he didn't have the intentions, then it would be usher. And certainly if he had the intentions to go ahead and polish it or to tan it, then it would be usher. Fine. A small person should not go out and wear much larger shoes on Shabbos, right? Why? Because the person will either become embarrassed, become too hard to walk, it's too clunky, and then he will remove the shoes and carry it. And therefore, he'll be carrying something dalamus, which is a rabbin. But he can go ahead and wear a big shirt. A big shirt, it won't slip off, right? And so therefore, a big shirt would be okay, and therefore, we're not worried a person is going to go ahead and carry it. A woman should not go out to use a torn shoe on Shabbos. Once again, the woman will be embarrassed in public. I guess the guys will not be embarrassed, but a woman will be embarrassed of wearing a torn shoe. And she might rather go barefoot than walk around in a torn shoe. Also, speaking of shoes, this really, you shouldn't go ahead and do chalitza with a torn shoe. But if a woman did perform a chalitza, right, the chalitza is right when her husband has died and they had no children, and halacha is really she should do yibum with the brother and marry the brother to have a child, to have a family in memory of her late husband, but she doesn't want to do it, so therefore she does a chalitza by spitting in a shoe or removing a shoe and spitting. So you should use a good shoe and not one with a hole in it. But if you use one with a hole in it, the chalitza is still valid. It still is kosher. Fine. You shouldn't go out in a new shoe, right? You just ordered a shoe online. You shouldn't go out or wear it out in Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because it might not fit you well. It might not fit you well. It might hurt. You might come out and carry it. Only that of a woman. Only when you never tried it on before and walked around. But if you did go around and you took it for a stroll, right? You tried it on, you wanted to see if it fit, and it fits, then even though it's the first time really wearing it, that'll be mutter to go ahead and wear it on Shabbos. So we have one brisa that says that you're allowed to go ahead and remove a shoe that was being made, a leather shoe that was being made, and they used to go ahead and be put like on the form of a foot, and the leather will go around it, and that's how they prepare the leather, and so therefore it was shaped for a foot, right? So you're allowed to go ahead and move it to take it off, and we have another one that says you can't go ahead and move it to take it off. So like Kasha, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi. So maybe it's not a machlok. It's two different brises, two different opinions. One is that of Rabbi Eliezer, and the other is Rabbanan. That's not we learn in the Mishnah. If you have a shoe, right, or a shoe that's being made on top of this, this mold, right? So Rabbi Eliezer says it's tahor. In other words, it's not considered to be a shoe yet. It's not a kli yet because it didn't come off the mold. It's only considered a shoe after the mold. However, the say it's mitamim, it's tameh. They hold it is a kli, right? It's a kli. So therefore, maybe you say like this: the two different brises, the one that says that you can go ahead and move it, maybe that's according to Chamim who holds that it's a valid shoe, and the other, and according to Rabbi Eliezer, right, it's muksa, it's not a shoe yet, and since it's not a kli, you can move on Shabbos, and therefore you want to be able to go ahead and move it. So Gemara says, if it's a davar shemalach l'yisr bein l'tzarech gufa bein l'tzarech mekayma mutter shapir. Yeah.
And to regard to the shoe, talking about malach.
Say it again.
They have forms that maybe to stretch. Okay, but what does that with in
to do the answer? What's the connection? Okay, all right. So we're gonna explain. We didn't get to yet.
We're dealing with Tuman.
Okay.
Got it.
So now, right. So good question. So right. So yesterday I was first doing it. So what's the shaycha? So we didn't we didn't explain it yet. So like this, right? What I was going to create his point now. The first thing was, now, if something is a kli, if it's a shoe, then a shoe is not muksa, right? Something which is in the process of being made into a shoe is not a shoe yet, right? And therefore, it's still considered to be muksa. Now, as we know, there's different forms of muksa and different reasons to use it, right? Are you allowed to go ahead and move? Let's say certain things you might not be allowed to use for it itself. In other words, if the item itself is muksa, and you want to use that item, I can't move that item because that item is muksa. But if that item was in an area that I wanted to go ahead and use, I can move that, even though it's muksa, if I would go ahead and use it for a paperweight, right? So it's different. So let's see. Now, according to Rava, that says a davar shemalach l'yisr, that's something whose usage on Shabbos is asur. Let's say such as something before. Right, this case of the shoe, according to Rabbi Eliezer, before it's used, right? So it's muksa mutter is mutter to go ahead and use. Then shapir, right? According to him, you can go ahead and move, right? Move it around, even if you're going to go ahead and use it for another reason, for a paperweight. So Shapir El Abaye, but according to Abaye, Dam L'Tzarech Gufa Mutter, that if it's the Tzarech Gufa, you're going to head and use it for it itself, then it's mutter. But the Tzarech Makamo Aser, Michael Amemar, what are you going to say over there? Because this mold, right, and the shoe that it's holding, according to him, is muksa, right? So if you're going to head and use it because you need the space, right, you want to go ahead and move the space. And so why would you, according to Abaye, why would you be able to move it, right? This shoe is not a shoe yet, and this mold is, and so these items are muksa. And if it's the Tzarech Mekaymo, you shouldn't be allowed to go ahead and move it. So how could it say that you can, according to Abaye, what even the opinion holds, you can move it? So, we're talking about over here when it's loosely on. And notice he doesn't have to go ahead and move the entire mold, right? He can go ahead and slip off the shoe. He can slip off the shoe without moving the muksa. So therefore, according to the Rabbanan, who hold that is not muksa, because it's already considered a shoe even while it's still on the mold. So therefore, to go ahead and slip it off, you're not moving anything muksa, and therefore it will be mutter. The Tanya, as we learned in Brayso, if it was loose, then you go ahead and slip it off.
It's still not why they brought it, whether it's
no. The whole point of tameh and not tameh, okay, was it doesn't mean whether it's susceptible to tuma. If it's tameh, only a kli can become tameh, right? So something which is a kli is not muksa on Shabbos. If you hold metahir, according to Rebbe Eliezer, it's tahor. Why is it tahor? In other words, it's not susceptible to tumah yet. Why is it not susceptible to tumah yet? Because it's not called a shoe, right? It's just a piece of raw leather which has not been made into a shoe. If it's a piece of leather not made into a raw shoe, into a shoe yet, it's considered to be muksa. In other words, that it makes it a clear knot. What?
so this is that has all, and it was shoe form.
It was they were making a shoe for the first time. I know you're breaking up a little bit. They're making a shoe for the first time. So the question is, when does it become a shoe? Is it a shoe while it's still on the form? Rebbe Eliezer says, no, it's not a shoe yet. It's only a shoe after it comes off. Then it's called a shoe. According to Chachamim, no, it can even become tameh while it's on the mold. Why? Because it's already considered a shoe once it's shaped, even though it's still on the mold. And that's the connection with Shabbos, whether it's a kli or not, because a kli is not muksa, right? But the others are, something which is not a kli yet is considered to be muksa. Fine. So the Gemara says, so Tamid Rafui, the only reason is because it's loose. But if it's not considered to be loose, then you won't be able to take it off. You won't be able to take it off at all because it's muksa. This works well. Why is it muksa? You can't take it off because according to Abaye, only if it's something so you can't let gufa mutter. If you want to use it itself, it is mutter. However, it's aser shapir. But if it's not loose, you won't be able to move it. Why? Because even if you want the space, as according to Abaye says, you can't just move it around because you want the area. According to Rava, who says either way, it should be mutter to move. So who cares, right? It's my area, the rafui, right? Why do you say even if it's loose? Even if it's not loose at all, you shouldn't be allowed to go ahead. And you should be allowed to go ahead and move it, right? Even though you're going to be going ahead and moving muksa. So Gemara answers, though, he Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda according to Rabbi Eliezer. The tiny little Bryce Rabbi Yehuda Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Im Hayar Rafui Mutter. Right? It says no. He says beferish. If it was loose, then it's mutter. So therefore, we say so too in this case. It's not the kasha on him, but it rather goes according to the beferish of the Tana who holds in this case that if it was loose, then you can go ahead and only then you can go ahead and take it off because you're not moving muksa and hajjan alach tailin mazel tov. And I don't know if we have any casting scenes on. Let's see. Oh, Avrami is there.
Mazel tov.
Mazel tov. Too bad. Mayor's probably riding his bike today. It's a nice day out, I'm sure. Mazel tov. As we finish the 20th parak of Masechah Shabbos, I think we have 4 more. Now let's get to the new parak. So we say over here, Noitel Adam as benai va'evan biyado. A person is allowed to go ahead and pick up, right, his son, and even though, despite the fact that there's muksa in his hand, so that he's picking up a child, and even though now a person's allowed to go ahead and move muksa, right? He can't go ahead and move muksa, so the child, right, is touching muksa, a little baby's holding muksa, and he's holding child. So is by the fact that he picks up the child, is he now picking up the stone? So says the Mishnah, he's allowed to do it. A person allowed to go ahead and pick up his child, even, despite the fact that there's a rock in his hand. Or a basket, you pick up a basket, and even though you have, despite the fact you have a stone in the basket, and you're allowed to go ahead and move a basket also if the basket contains both truma tameya and tahira. Now, truma tahira can be eaten. Now, truma tameya, even though you have to give it to the kohen, right? If it was truma, you're supposed to separate around 1/50th, right, of your crop. You give it to the kohanim as truma gedola, so that they can eat. However, it's tameh, a kohen can't go ahead and eat it. So what does he do with it? He can go ahead and burn it and use it for fuel. But you can't burn fuel on Shabbos, so it's muksa. So typically, truma tameya is muksa. Nevertheless, if you have a basket containing both, you're allowed to go ahead and move it. Truma tameya ima tahira, v'ima chulin, or if it's with chulin, or if it's with something that is chulin that is not truma at all, it's just regular food. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer, af ma'alina meduma be'echad me'meya. You're even allowed to go ahead and take out. Right. Speaking of truma, one let's say has a chulin. And then all of a sudden, you have some truma fall in there, but it falls in there. Now it's a mixture, right? Now it's a mixture. You have now it has to be a certain ratio in order to say that okay, the amount that fell into it is mevatel, is nullified, and therefore you're allowed to go ahead and even take out that a certain amount. We say it's nullified, but even though it's nullified, you have to take out that which amount that fell in because you can't eat everything. So you take out the one piece that you don't know which one. You just say, okay, this is probably the piece that fell out, and then you put it on. Then you eat the rest because even if it wasn't the piece that you took out, at least it was the truma, the halachically was nullified. So you're allowed to go ahead and take it out, and it's not considered to be mesakein on Shabbos. You're not fixing anything. We'll have to explain why that's not called fixing on Shabbos. All right, we'll explain when we get there. Let's see the Gemara first. So Gemara, we started off talking about. You can pick up a baby who's holding muksa. It's not a problem of you also picking up the muksa. The keys totally besaro. One who goes ahead and takes out a live baby, right? We'll soon see, as opposed to a one that's not alive, right? So haitzi tina chai the keys totally besaro, and he has, let's say, a keys, something, some sort of wallet or something, a purse around his neck. Chayiv mishum keys. He's chayiv because of the keys. In other words, that even though the fact that he picked up the child, he's not chayiv for the child, but he is chayiv for the keys that's around the neck of the child, right? If he goes outside and he carries Dalet Amos in the Rosh Hashanah. And Tinok mace, if it is a dead baby, the keys totally low, and there's a keys around the neck also of this corpse of this dead baby. V'tzaro pater. Then he's pater from everything. So we have to explain. So Tino chayv keys tolei v'tzaro chayv v'shum keys chayv v'shum keys. So goes says the chayv nam v'shum Tino. So you're carrying the baby, and there's a keys around his neck. So why am I only chayv for carrying the keys? I should be also chayv for carrying the baby. So the answer is no. Rava could have not severely damer chayv noise asasmo. Right? He has the concept of chayv noise asasmo. Right? When a person is alive, right? So, and he's being carried, he's noisei assassin. He's also carrying himself. So in other words, he's not, quote unquote, dead weight, right? So since, let's say, when you hold the baby, it sort of puts, the baby puts their arms on you or whatever it is. So the chai noisei assassin. So a live person while alive is considered to be carrying itself. You're not doing 100% of the work. You might be doing 98% of the work. It's if a person allows himself to be carried or even assists with it, and therefore the person carrying it is not completely chayiv. So even if a person went out and picked up another human and walked with that, or even an animal, is by explain Rav Nassan, right? You walk out carrying a person, since they're allowing them to be carried by you. Therefore, the carrier is not chayiv chatas for carrying on Shabbos. So Gemara says, "I livatel kis legabi tinok." So why don't we go ahead and say that this kis is batel to the tinok? In other words, the purse is really secondary, right, to, or with the chain, whatever is around the neck of the baby. So let's say it's like secondary to the child, it's mevatel, and therefore, since I'm only really carrying a child, I'm not carrying a child and a purse. So just say I'm carrying a child, and since I'm part of the child, I'm part of everything. So it's a chai v'mita, pata v'mita. If you carry someone on the bed, right, then you are pater from even the bed. Why? Because the bed is mevatel shamit tveilalo. Because the bed is batel to the person that you're carrying it in. So too in this case, why don't we say that the purse is mevatel to the tinok? So it says miti chai mevatele. So kis lagabi tinok mevatele. Right? Now, it's when you have the bed, the person is using the bed, lying in the bed. So therefore, since the bed is a purpose, so therefore it's mevatel. But when it's batel to it. But when it comes to a purse, since there is no real reason for why it's around the neck, so therefore it's not considered to be batel to the person. It's independent. It's really no use, and therefore it's like you're carrying two things: a baby, which you're pater for, and also the person on the neck. So tinok mesa kis tali l'tzara pater. So I l'chai mishum tinok. So why don't you be chai because of the tinok? So Rabba Rabbi Shimon Shirlei Damar Kol B'Chashet Tzilei Gufa pater alas. So we said no, because over here you're carrying the mace out, right? Not for the purpose of the mace, but rather the purpose of it because you're carrying it for the to alleviate, right? To alleviate, to have it to carry the baby out. You're not looking to take the mace to a specific area. You're just looking to move the mace from where it's at. So therefore, since that's considered to be a melocha she'en tzrich legufa, in other words, you just want to go ahead and clear your house of any corpses, right? So therefore, by carrying it outside, you're not really doing it for the purpose of taking it to place B. You're just looking at to remove from the area. So that's called melocha she'en tzrich legufa.
I have a question.
And one is pater for that. Yeah.
So we're only dealing with Shabbat. We're only dealing with muksa in terms of carrying. What about the tuma aspect of the dead baby?
Right. So there would be complete tuma in this case, right?
But is that a reason why we can move it out to get the tuma away?
We move. The mace is normally they move it for. We say for the dignity of the mace, right? For kavod brios, right? So kavod brios is a reason why it's being moved from a place, especially if it's outdoors or if it's in the sun or something. So that is a reason to go ahead and move it. It's not. I'm not sure if you can move it to remove the tuma. I think there are cases where we go ahead and we move it because of the tuma in order to remove the tuma from the room, from a sohel.
So that's why it's not muksa, because we're doing kavod mace?
Right. Yes. Kavod brios is the isser of muksa. Right. But we don't bury it. We don't bury it in Shabbos. Right? That we dealt with earlier. So Tanan. So he said, "Noitel adam is b'noi v'evin b'yado." So we said in our Mishnah, first let's go ahead.
You can't move the mace for the sake of the mace. That's
right. Correct. You put a loaf or a baby
move it
in it. Right.
You want the room to be tahor, so you're removing the mace. That's not for the mace.
Correct. All right. So we say the Mishnah says Tanan Naitil Adam as B'nai ve'evin b'yado. So a person allowed to go ahead and take so a person allowed to go ahead and take his son and our Mishnah despite the fact that there's a rock in his hand. So Amri debei Rabbi Yanai. So why do we say he's allowed to go ahead and carry that? Why do we say, if we said earlier, right, that one is allowed to go, that it's mevatel, so why over here, right, did we say that in the case of the pouch you're chayiv because it's considered like carrying it? So why in the case of the baby with the rock is it not like you're moving the muksa? Right? In the case of the pouch, we said you're chayiv for the keys shall svaro, and then baby's next. So why aren't you also chayiv for in the case or touching muksa? Why are you allowed to move the muksa that's in the rock's hand? So the baby Rabbi Yanai, no, but tinok sheyesh lagigun alav. We're talking about basically a child who really needs their father, right? Did not adapt so well, and therefore the child really needs his father. And the child will get sick, right? The child will be very affected, right? Yichle, right? He'll become sick, as Rashi says, right? He'll become sick if he doesn't go ahead and allow him to hold on to his security rock, and therefore one is allowed to go ahead and move this. If that's the case, so my area, why do you say Evan? Afila dinar nami, right? Even a dinar, right? Even if it was money, like a dollar bill in his hand, right? But why did Rava teach? No, we're only talking about a rock, but not the money. So Gemara says, Evan, if it was a rock and it fell out, so therefore the father's not going to pick it up. However, dinar, but if it was money, then perhaps the father might come to pick it up, and therefore that's the reason why he shouldn't go ahead and pick up or move his bait or hold his child if there's money in his hand. And Tani Kabasi Rabbi have a Bryce in support of Rabba. If one goes ahead and he goes outside and he's carrying, right, his clothes, they're folded on his shoulder, right, or his shoes, and his rings, he's holding his hand, he's chayiv. However, but if he's wearing them, then he's pater. One's allowed to go out and dressed, right, out into the public way. However, if a person goes ahead and carries another person, and that person is holding, right, the keleva, and he has his clothes on, and he's wearing his shoes on his feet and his rings on his hand, he's pater, right? He's pater from carrying the person because he's pater from carrying the clothes that are on the person because the person is wearing his bevatla. But if you just carry them out, right, then he is chayiv. Then we see he's chayiv. So therefore, in this case, if he was pater, so therefore, in other words, if they were just folded on the other person and he carried out the other person, so even though he's pater on the person, he is chayiv for carrying out those items which are not being worn by that other person. I didn't see who that was. So it's kilklo. So we say that if a person has a basket and there's a rock in the basket, you're allowed to go ahead and carry the basket despite the fact that there's muksa also in the basket. So the Gemara says, why do we say that the basket is now considered to be a basis, something which is a base for something which is muksa? It itself is muksa. So why isn't the basket muksa? So we're talking about a basket also full of fruit, since fruit are not muksa, so therefore the basket is not considered to be a basis l'davar aser. So why don't you go ahead and just basically pour out the basket, right? And then just put the fruit back in the basket, and now you don't have the muksa anymore, and you just have the basket, excuse me, of fruit. Why don't we allow you to do that? So the Gemara answers no. Like Rabbi Eloyam Arav, who says the peros hamitafas hachanav peros hamit nothing. Rabbi Eloyam said in another case, we're talking about right fruits that would be gross and disgusting if they fell on the ground. I guess they're sticky, whatever it is. Therefore, they're not like apples; so they can't just pick them off the ground, right? They'll become soiled if you dump it on the ground. So therefore, since there is no option to go ahead and basically dump all of the contents of the basket, so therefore you're forced to go ahead and carry the basket with the stone and the fruit in it. So let him go ahead and basically shake it out, and sort of shake it out so only the rock falls out. So okay, so we're talking about a different case. Talking about a case over here where we say that there's a hole in the basket, and basically the stone, right, basically gets stuck in the hole of the basket, and therefore basically becomes almost like part of the basket, and therefore you can't shake it out, and therefore you're allowed to go ahead and nevertheless you still go ahead and carry that basket despite the fact that there's a rock in it to carry it with the fruits. Fine, 2 dots. Metaltlin truma. You can go ahead and take the truma. So similarly, we say Amar Rav Chisa. So says Rav Chisa, Loishanu ela shetayir lamatim tmei lamala. We're only talking about a case of where the tahira is in the bottom, and that which is tamei, the muksa. Because remember, tamei truma is only used, or can be only used by the kohanim for fuel, for lighting their ovens and stoves, because they can't eat it. So therefore, that stuff which is muksa must be on the top, and the truma tahira is on the bottom. Aval tahira lamala, but tmei lamata shakile l'tayr v'shavik l'tuma. But if the Torah was on top and the muksa stuff was on the bottom, then just take off the Torah stuff, right? And then leave the tumah. I understand. Wait, even if we say the muksa, the good stuff was on the bottom, the muksa was on top, okay, so just spill it out and then just pick up the good stuff. So once again, we're talking about fruits that would become basically ruined if they fall on the ground. So Meisvesu Kasha, it says Metaltlin Truma Tamei Ima Tahira V'Ima Chulin. You're allowed to go ahead and move Truma, which is Tamei, which we said is Muksa because it's used for fuel, and you're not allowed to go ahead and add fuel to a fire on Shabbos. So you're allowed to go ahead and move truma tmeya if it's with tahira or with chulin. Bein shetahira lamal l'tmeya lamata. Bein shetmeya lamal l'tahira lamata. So to Rav Chisda, whether or not, doesn't matter what's on top. If the Torah is on top or the Torah is on the bottom. Rav Chisda said we're only talking about a case when the Torah, right, is on the bottom, because the Torah is the Torah is on top. Then just take out the stuff that you want. You don't have to move the whole basket. So I'm looking at Rav Chisda, mas nisan letzarech gufo, bryce letzarech mekama. No, it's different. Our mission is talking about letzarech gufo. He wants to go ahead and eat the Torah fruits. If he wants to go ahead and eat the Torah fruits, so then he could just go ahead and if it's on the top, then go ahead and take out the top. But if he wants the Torah fruits and on the bottom, then you can't move it. But this brisa, which says doesn't matter if it's on top or bottom, right? If it's in the basket, it's because the basket is in the middle of your Shabbos table, and you want to go ahead and move the basket so you have space to eat. That's the case where it says you can move it. Doesn't make a difference what's on top, what's on bottom, because you need to move the entire basket because it's letzarech mekayma. So my duchid Rav Chisda l'ukmei masnit letzarech gufo. So why is Rav Chisda forced to say that our mission is talking about a case where he's actually just moving it because he wants to go ahead and eat some of the Torah truma? So Marava, Masnis, and Kavasi, actually, if you look at the wording of the Mishnah, it actually sounds like you can make a dig of the Mishnah that's like him. Why? The Tani says in the Sefer, Ma'ishal Hakar, Menar es Hakar ve'neiflas. If there was money that was on a pillow, you're allowed to go ahead and shake the pillow and they fall off. Right? We're only talking about where it says over there, L'tzarech gufo. Right, when it's talking about that he needs the pillow itself, right? He's allowed to go ahead and pick up the pillow. If he needs a space where the pillow is at, he's allowed to go ahead and pick up the pillow and move it somewhere else, right? Right? And there he's allowed to go ahead and move it and shake it off, or while it's still on. By the fact that the sefer tastes of the money, we're talking about where he wants the pillow itself. So too in the ratio, we're talking about when he wants the fruit itself. And therefore, if he wants the fruit itself, we're only talking about when the good fruit is on top, the non-muksa stuff is on top, the tire is on top. And that's the case that we're talking about. Fine. 2 dots. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, af malin v'chule. So Rabbi Yehuda was talking about a case of now, normally one is not allowed to go ahead and be masakin fruits. You can't go ahead and separate truma and meiser on Shabbos because you're fixing, right? You're fixing the produce, making it ready to eat. Now, questions like this: if you have a mixture of 100 chulin, and you have or tahor, and you have something that was tameh that fell inside, that's something that fell inside. So in such a case, we say that it's normally nullified, right? It's normally nullified. It's batel 1 in 100, right? So we say it's batel, right? In this case, right? And therefore, in such a case, even though it's mavatel and the mixture is still permitted to go ahead and eat from, you still have to go ahead and take out the one item that sort of represented what fell in. Because if I have 100 here, right, good ones, and one bad one fell in, and I ate all 101. So obviously, I ate whatever the truma was, even though it was nullified, but I ate it. So most opinions hold that you just have to take out any one of the 100 and eat the 100, and therefore it is mutter to eat the 100, because we can say that the one I took out, removed, was okay, right? Was the one that was tummy. So now, says Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, you're allowed to go ahead and take it out. That's not called being masakin. That's not the same as separating truma and meiser and making something ready to go ahead and eat, right? Because it was sort of ready before. So Gemara says, "How come masakin?" Well, isn't he fixing it? Why is this not considered to be masakin? So Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eliezer. So okay, so let's say the first stab at it is that we're going to say Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Eliezer, Damar, who holds that truma ba'ina machta. That by truma, you have to go ahead and it's considered to be. It has to be separate, right? The truma has to be separate. The amount that you're separating has to be separate over here. The Tanai with the Mishnah saw truma shnav l'pachas me'av v'nidmo. If you have a saw, right, one saw of truma that fell in a mixture that was less than 100 saw, and it became mixed in there. V'nafel mina meduma l'makom acher. So let's say you had, let's say it was 50, right? So one fell into 50. Now you have 150. So 150 or one fell to 49, right? You have 150. 150 is not a good enough, a small enough ratio to be mevatel. The whole mixture would be usher, right? But now you take 1 from that 50 and you add it to another mixture. So now you only have 1/50th added to something else. So now the ratio gets that much smaller. Says Rabbi Eliezer, we look at that which went into the new mixture as truma vada. In other words, it wasn't 1/50th tame. Rather, it was considered to be the whole thing was tame, right? That was the tame thing. That was the first part. It went to the second one. He says, no, we only look at the ratio as now what we know what it was. So now it's 1/50th fell into the new ratio of, let's say, another 40 parts. So it's now 1/50th of 1 that fell into 40 parts, and therefore, certainly it would be nullified. So if you hold like Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that it's considered to be lying there, right? It's considered to be there. So it's not considered. So if you hold that it's lying, so therefore it's not really considered to be a mixture. If it's not considered to be a mixture because it's basically separated already, so therefore maybe in our case, just like Rabbi Eliezer over here says it was the one that went to the mixture. So too, Rabbi Eliezer says you can go ahead and you're not really being masakin it. So the rest says no. Maybe over there, Rabbi Eliezer only says that's considered to be right truma itself because we hold that lechumra. Now, to be chumra, we'll say that one piece that came from the first mixture went to the second mixture to even possibly aster that one. But lakula mishmiyaslei. But what do you say lakula to say that no, since it's not really mixed in, you're not being masakin it. It creates a tremendous kula. So Ella. So who does Rabbi Yehuda hold like? Ella who damer Rabbi Shimon. Maybe he holds like Rabbi Shimon. If you have a saw of truma that fell into a 100 of chulin, right? So now, how can a Yisrael eat it? Well, he speak like a and all of a sudden, before he went ahead and took out 1, because we said, okay, as long as you take out 1, 101 of it, right? 1 of the 101. It's like you took out the truma because it's mevatalit. But before he had a chance to go ahead and take a piece and take it out, what happened? Until a second one fell in there. Hare zu asur. It's now asur because now no longer 1 in 100. It's now 2 of 100, which is 1/50th. 1/50th is 2%, which is much larger than 1 in 100. Rabbi Shimon mater, and Rabbi Shimon over there says mutter. Rabbi Shimon says mutter. Why is that case? He says, so we have to see. So he is makel in this case. He says it's already considered to be nullified. The first one's already nullified before the second one. So he holds it, and therefore maybe Rabbi Yehuda holds in that case, just like over there, is considered to be nullified once it fell in. So over here it's already nullified, and therefore you're not really being misaki. So the rest says, "My Dilma Hasa B'Hakamifli." Maybe we'll hear this machlokes. The Tana Kama Saver Afal Gav the Nafal Zebachar Zeh Kamad the Nafal B'Vasachas Dami. Maybe the Tanakh held that even though they one fell after one another, it's considered like they fell at the same time. It wasn't considered like one fell in 100, and then a second one, and then they all became chulin because it was nullified, and then one fell in 101 and it was nullified again. No, maybe the Tanakh holds that Kamad and Basachas. I mean, it's like they fell at the same time. So it wasn't like one fell into 100, then one fell into 101. Rather, it was like 2 that fell into 100, and therefore it's not nullified. Therefore, each one was 1/50th. And Rabbi Shimon said, no, maybe the first one was nullified in the 100, and therefore the second one is nullified in 101. But maybe if that's the case, Rabbi Shimon would hold, right, it's not considered to be separate from the others. It's just considered to be nullified. So therefore, even if you hold like Rabbi Shimon, who says Rabbi Shimon in our case, in the case of whether you're allowed to do it on Shabbos, right, is nullified. It could be nullified, but doesn't mean it's separated. It's still considered to be there. And therefore, if you go ahead and remove on Shabbos, right, 1 from the mixture is considered to be even misakin it. So Ella hu damar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Rather, he holds like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. The Tana in the Bryce of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Amer Noisin beina b'tzad zev v'eich b'tzad acher. A person is allowed to go ahead and think in his mind, right? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I can eat from here because at that end I'm going to take after Shabbos. So as long as you're, or even during the week, right? You're even without physically separating it, as long as you have in mind that I'm going to go ahead and separate that, that's going to be the one that I'll take off, from the truma, the truma that fell off in air, or the truma tbeya that fell off in air. I can go eat from the good end, right? So that's mutter. So the Gemara says, so therefore Rabbi Huda, if he holds like that, so therefore you can separate like that. So the Gemara says, Misa like Kavasi, does Rabbi Huda really hold like that? Actually, Rabbi Huda argues the tiny when the rice of Rabbi Huda Imer, Ma'alina Samadum Bechar Umeya. Rabbi Shimon says, Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to go ahead and remove a part of Truma, right, 1 from 100, right, on Shabbos, and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, nice and you're allowed to go ahead and see one end and not the other. So we see over here that Rabbi Yehuda says you're not allowed to do it. So how could you say that he holds like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, who says, as long as you have in mind, right, I'm going to go ahead and remove after Shabbos from over here, I can eat the other part, right? It's okay. I don't have to fix it first, right, because you can't fix it on Shabbos. So why does he hold that? So our answer is no. Rabbi Yehuda difa the Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Maybe Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, since I have to have in mind, right, that in order to do, to eat from the other end. But maybe Rabbi Yehuda holds that no, I don't even have to go ahead. That I don't even have to have in mind, right? I don't even have to have in mind to go ahead and to remove it, right? That not only I can do that, but even if I go ahead and remove it physically, that's not considered masakin, because no, it's already considered to be fixed, right? Even within my mind, according to Rabbi Shimon, right? You have to go ahead and have in mind. I'm going to go ahead, or Shimon knows I have to go ahead and have that in mind, and then I can eat from the other end, right? But I can't go ahead and remove it on Shabbos, right? But I have to have in mind. According to Rabbi Yehuda, says no, as long as you have it in mind, right? Therefore, it's like it's already removed. If it's like it's already moved, that which I physically take it out is not considered to be masaking, right? It's not fixing it. So therefore, by me taking out, the whole question was, how could you go ahead and take out the tame from the good mixture? The answer is, aren't you being masaking? The answer is, you're not being masaking it, because once you do it in your mind, it's as if it's done. As if it's done. So therefore, that which I physically take it out is not considered to be masaking, because it was already fixed. By me having in mind that after Shabbos, I'll go ahead, or another time, I'll remove part of the mixture. So since I already have in mind moving part of the mixture, it's considered like it's already moved, and that which I physically move, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is not considered to be misakin. Fine. Now I Mishnah.
Wait, okay, I want to try to understand this last whole part. You have tevel, so you can't eat from it, but you can mentally designate a portion of it as truma.
No. We're not talking about tevel. We're talking about he had good chulim, and some truma fell into there. We're talking about a mixture.
Truma fell inside it.
Right. We're talking
now
about a
you
mixture.
Have to remove the truma, or is it all considered to be truma?
Right, but
is it all considered to be truma if truma fell into it?
No. It has to be if there's a ratio of less than 1 to 100. In other words, there's 150 parts to 1, then it's mavatal. Then it's all good. But even though it's all good,
it's all considered to be chulin or truma?
Yes, chulin. It's all good. It's chulin. It's mavatal. But we still require you to take out one part that fell in, because that was the truma. That was the old truma. So you can't eat everything, because if you eat everything, we know you ate the truma. So just take out one part, and we'll say that one part was the truma. But it's really nullified.
So you can mentally designate that I'm not going to eat that part.
Right. According to Shimon, right. Yes. Right.
Okay.
Very good.
Right. Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, all right, we got to move.
Anaya Mishnah.
Oh, so Mishnah says, Ha'even shal piachovis matal tzidavihino. Fellas, if you have a stone on top of a barrel, you're allowed to go ahead and basically move the barrel for it to fall off. Matal tzidavihino. Fellas, and it falls off. But let's say it's amongst the other barrels, and therefore you don't really have the opportunity to go ahead and roll it off, because if you roll it off, it'll break another one. So mabia umatal tzidavihino. Fellas, you can go ahead and carry it outside from away from the other barrels, right? So move the entire barrel with the stone on top, and then shake it off over there. And ma'isal kikar, also if you have money on a pillow, menaris kikar ve'nafel, you can go ahead and shake the pillow and to get the money off. And haisalav l'shaleshes, if you have, let's say, dirt on the pillow, so and go ahead and wipe it off with a rag. And or if it was made of leather, then nice and not only you wipe with the rag, you even pour water on it because we're not worried that the water will get absorbed, and you'll go ahead and squeeze it out, or you'll be malaving it since it's not a porous substance. It's flat, and the water will come off. Therefore, you got to go ahead and put my water on it until it gets clean. So let's see the Gemara. So we're only talking about if the stone is on top of the barrel, if you forgot it there. But if you put it there intentionally, then it's considered to be a basis, and therefore it's considered to be muksa because he did it intentionally for this barrel to hold the rock, and therefore there will be muksa. And Haisa bin Achavias, it was amongst the barrels. So who's the Tanu who holds that if there is an Isser and a Hetzer, right? Now, is the Isser would be to move the rock, right? The Hetzer would be to move the barrel, right? We go ahead, we tell you to move the permissible object, to move the barrel, and not to move the rock. Don't make contact with the rock. So who says that? The Tanakh in the Mishnah, Habarer Kitten is biyamtov. One goes ahead and he has basically amongst his kidneys, his beans, he has pieces of some rocks or dirt, whatever it is, and he wants to go ahead and separate it. So you go ahead and basically take out the good food and then eat it that way. Beis Hillel's says no. Go ahead and basically do the borer the normal way on his lap or on a plate in front of him. That you shake it out. The Vitani says over there, Amar Rav Shimon Gamliel, b'medvar murim, sha'aychel maruba b'pseilas. We're talking about over here when there is more aychel than a pseilas. So therefore, go ahead and remove the pseilas. But if there is more muksa, right, there is more stuff that he doesn't want, more of the rocks and the dirt and all that, go ahead and don't deal with the muksa items, right? Deal with the stuff that you want. Deal with the non-muksa items. So what do we see over here? But 1 second. In our case, it's like we're talking about we're talking about a case of where there is more eichel than the psolas. So why over here are we making him go ahead and deal with the entire barrel? Why instead of carrying the heavy entire barrel and moving it away from the other barrels to shake it off over there, just simply take off the stone here, move the muksa, move the smaller part. So since over here in our case, if he wants to go ahead and take out all the wine from the big barrel, right? So the wine won't come out until he goes ahead and lifts the entire thing off the ground. Since he has to take it anyways, so since he has to move the entire barrel if he wants all the contents of the wine, so therefore it's not considered doing extra work by moving out the entire barrel. He doesn't have to move the entire barrel anyways if he wants all the wine. So therefore, in that case, we'd rather you go ahead and move the barrel and therefore take the rock off that way as opposed to moving the rock directly in the muksa. Fine. 2 dots. If he goes ahead and amongst the barrel, he just go ahead and lift it. So Tanya, Rabbi Yosi, Aimer, if the barrel was in an eitzer, or if it was an eitzer, he could have moved it because other barrels around, or there was glass around it. Move it to another area and lean to a side, and it'll fall off. Then go ahead and take whatever he needs, and then return it back to its place. Fine. So that was explanation of the Mishnah. The Moshe Akar that we say if there was money that was left on the pillows. That Amar Rav Chia Barashi Amar Rav once again he says Lo Shano L'Meshokech. We're only talking about if you forgot it there. But if you put it there purposely, then he made the pillow a basis l'davar aser, and therefore it would be mutzar to go ahead and shake it off. And Amar Rav Chanan Rav Yechon Lo Shano L'Tzarech Gufa. We're only talking about if he needs the pillow. Well, if he needs the area where the pillow is at, he can go ahead and basically pick up the pillow while the money's there. He doesn't have to go ahead and shake, knock the pillow so the money falls off. He can pick up the pillow with the muksa money on it. This also is taught the same exact thing, that if he wants the pillow, then he goes ahead and shake it off. But if he needs a space, then he can go ahead and pick up the pillow with the money on it. So says Rabbi Yosha, I'm Rabbi Yosha. Shachach arnaki b'chatzer. Person goes ahead and he forgets his purse in a chatzer. and there's money, and he wants to go, how can go ahead and retrieve it, right? Let's say it's a chatzir where it's not carrying, there's an Erev there. So maniach kikar tinag metalta. Go ahead and put a non-muksa object such as a baby, right? Just don't tell the mother; she'll be very upset with you. Or let's say a loaf of bread. Put a loaf of bread on the purse. Now the purse is not considered to be just something holding money. It's also considered to be holding bread. Something holding bread is not a basis for a davar that's mutter, and therefore I can move it. And Amar Rav Yitzchak Shakak Levina B'Chatzir, similarly, one who gets a brick in a chatzir and he needs it, he wants to, it's valuable, he wants to bring it in. So go ahead and put either a baby or a loaf of bread on it, and then he can move it. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Bar Shila Amar Rabasi Hamacha Shachu Diskaya Malaya Meos Besartia. So one time they forgot a pouch, right, full of money out in the public area. And they went ahead and they asked Rabbi Yochanan, what should we do? Go ahead and put either a money or a loaf of bread on it, and then you go ahead and move it. And once again, all these cases are talking about when he forgets it out there. But if he left it out there purposely, one would not allow to go ahead and do this. And Rav Ashi Amar, even if you forgot it, also not only that, you forgot you couldn't do it. That which we said to use this move of putting a loaf or a baby on is only referring to a mace bilvad. Only for a mace, only because it covered a brios to do for the cover of the mace. But it's another reason, right? Because you left your purse out there, you don't want it to get lost or to get stolen. That says Rav Ashi, you're not allowed to go ahead and do it. However, Abayi, Manach, Kappa, Akipi, and Rava Meneach, Sakina, Abar Yoina Mataze. So Abaye went ahead and he put a spoon on top of grain, right, which is muksa. And Rava did the same thing. He put a knife on top of, I guess, dove meat, and then he moved it. And so in Amar Rav Yosef, B'ma Charifa Shmaitza Dardaki. So he says, right, how sharp, right, these limudim of the young children are, right? When did the Rabbanan say you got to go ahead and do it? They always said if you forgot it, but who said he can do it? So how were these Rabbaye able to go ahead and do it? And Rava, how are they able to go ahead and do it? We only says if it was an accident, they forgot it out there. So who said they can do it? Some Rabbaye, if I was Adam Chashiv, I wouldn't have even done that. Why? Right? Because it wasn't muksa. Right? The items I took, right? The straw. The grain was a muksa, because if I want, I can go ahead and lie in the grain. I can use it to lie upon. So it's not muksa. So I put it just because I'm an Adam Chashiv. People will think maybe he's muksa, so I put a spoon on it to make to people realize that it's for sure not muksa. And I'm a Rava. It says Rava, even if I wasn't Adam Chashiv, I wouldn't even put the knife on top of the meat. Why? I can go ahead and I can eat it raw, since I can still eat it raw. Therefore, it's not muksa, but I did just in case, so people won't assume. So I put a knife on it to show that it was a basis. So Tama the chazil umtza. The only reason is for chazil umtza. Hal the chazil umtza low. But if it wasn't fit for me to eat, go ahead. Then it would not be mutter. So Lamema de Rava Rabbi Yehuda Sfirle. It must be that Rava held like Rabbi Yehuda. All right. In other words, who holds that when it comes to muksa, like Rabbi Yehuda is more machmir. It says if it wasn't food, it would have been muksa. Hama Rava the shami. Tavi li bar avza ushadi mala shunra. Right. Go ahead and take a goose and roast it for me, I guess, on Yontif, right, when you're allowed to go ahead and cook, and then go give it to the cats. Now, cat food, right, is not food for a person. It's only food fit for a cat. Nevertheless, Rava paskins that you're allowed to go ahead and feed an animal, even though, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Shimon, it'd be mutter. So you just said Rava held like Rabbi Yehuda, but I over here you see holds like Rabbi Shimon, who's more meka when it comes to food. So Gemara says, no, Hasam came in the Messiah over there. Now, even if you hold like Rabbi Yehuda, since it would have spoiled, it was prepared for the day before. He knew it was going to go bad, and therefore it was prepared for the day before, and therefore it would not be muksa, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. And Hachinami is also logical to say, why? To Rabbi Yehuda say that really Rabbi does hold like Rabbi Yehuda. Why? The Daresh Rabbi Darshan. Isha loy tikanes lebeisa eitzim. They told man, a woman should not go ahead and take a regular piece of, or someone should not go ahead and take a piece of wood to go ahead and use it as an oud, right? As like a poker to use for the fire on Yantif. The oud shanishbar also asikal b'yantif. And if basically a poker that if that broke on Yontif, you would not be able to go ahead and burn it on Yontif. Because you're only allowed to go ahead and burn things that are kalim, but not broken kalim. Broken kalim are usher, right? Those are muksa because they had a designated use before Yontif, and since it broke, you can't just say, oh, now it's basically considered to be scrap wood. I can go ahead and burn it. It's muksa. Right, so we see that Rava, who passed in this way, is more machmir when it comes to muksa because he holds you can't go ahead and burn shivri kalim, so that he holds like Rabbi Yehuda and not like Rabbi Shimon, and therefore we say that earlier that Rava also held like Rabbi Yehuda and not like Rabbi Shimon. Shema mina, indeed, learn from here, and we'll stop here. Shikoyach, everybody, have a wonderful day and enjoy the beautiful weather. Take care. Welcome back, Eddie.